Hello and welcome to this video from Revision World, focusing on the novella A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This video is designed to cover the core study areas which include the characters, quotes, themes, structure, language and historical context of the novella. Let's start by familiarising ourselves with the key characters. Ebenezer Scrooge is the main character of the novella. He is a cold and miserly old man. Scrooge owns a London counting house. At the beginning of the novella, Scrooge hates Christmas and he rejects all offerings of Christmas cheer and celebration as humbug. During the novella, he is visited by three spirits of Christmas in the hopes of reversing his greedy, cold-hearted approach to life and his fellow man. By the end of the story, Scrooge is a changed man, sharing his wealth and generosity with everyone. Bob Cratchit is Scrooge's clerk at the counting house. He is a kind, mild man. He is very poor and has a large family to provide for. Though treated harshly by Scrooge, Cratchit remains a humble and dedicated employee. When the ghost of Christmas Present takes Scrooge to visit the Cratchits on Christmas Day, he sees Bob Cratchit carrying his sickly son, Tiny Tim. At the end of the novel, after Scrooge has changed his ways, Bob Cratchit is delighted. He welcomes Scrooge's newfound generosity and friendship. The Cratchit family include Mrs. Cratchit, who is the wife of Bob Cratchit. She is a kind and loving woman, although she has little love and patience for Ebenezer Scrooge. Peter Cratchit is Bob's oldest son, who inherits his father's stiff-collared shirt for Christmas. Martha and Belinda Cratchit are two of Bob's daughters. Martha works in a milliner's shop. Tiny Tim is Bob Cratchit's youngest son. Tiny Tim has been crippled from birth. Fred is Scrooge's nephew. He is a genial man who loves Christmas. Every year he invites Scrooge to his Christmas party, only for it to be refused. Even when Scrooge puts down all his talk of Christmas festivities, Fred persists with his good cheer and welcomes Scrooge at the end of the novel when Scrooge turns up for Christmas dinner. Jacob Marley has been dead for 7 years at the start of the novella. In life, Marley was Scrooge's equally greedy business partner. On Christmas Eve, he appears to Scrooge as a ghost condemned to wander the world bound in heavy chains. Marley offers his old partner a chance to escape a similar fate. The ghost of Christmas Past is the first spirit to visit Scrooge on Christmas Eve. The ghost takes Scrooge on a tour of the Christmases of his own past, from early childhood and into his young adulthood. The final scene the ghost of Christmas Past presents is one that Scrooge cannot bear to witness: his lost love, Belle, with her family. Scrooge turns on the ghost and demands to be shown no more. The ghost of Christmas Present is the second spirit to visit Scrooge. His lifespan is restricted to Christmas Day. Scrooge is more humble in the presence of the second spirit and is willing to learn any lessons the ghost will show. The ghost of Christmas Present escorts Scrooge on a tour of the Christmas celebrations of the people closest to him, including heartwarming scenes of celebration at the homes of Bob Cratchit and Scrooge's nephew Fred. The ghost also shows Scrooge two yellow, meagre children who are hiding under his cloak. These are called Ignorance and Want, and are a warning to Scrooge to change his ways. The ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is the third and final spirit to visit Scrooge. Silent throughout their visit, the spirit shows Scrooge images of future Christmases and the prospect of a lonely death. The ghost of Christmas Yet to Come takes Scrooge to the Cratchit household, where he is upset to realise that Tiny Tim has died. Finally, the ghost shows Scrooge a tombstone engraved with his own name. Scrooge then pledges to change his ways so he can avoid a solitary death. Next, I'll move on to the key themes of the novella: generosity, compassion, and the Christmas spirit. The novella takes place on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and uses the ideas of generosity and compassion that we associate with Christmas to highlight the transformation of Scrooge. Christmas is a time when families and friends come together in their homes to share food and exchange gifts, but it's also a time when we're supposed to think of those who are less fortunate than ourselves. Scrooge's nephew Fred and his clerk Bob Cratchit show compassion towards him, which is in stark contrast to those who coldly dismiss him, including fellow business people, his servants and the pawn shop owner, and Scrooge shows them a lack of compassion back. Dickens shows us in the novella that if you show others a lack of compassion, they will not show you compassion back. Redemption and free will. Seeing the error of your ways and being saved from sin or evil is a key theme in the novella. Scrooge is transformed from a mean, greedy and lonely old miser who is blind to his sin to a generous, good-natured, beloved character. Charles Dickens taps into a key Victorian Christian value that sinners can be saved from damnation as human beings have the opportunity to make choices and behave in kinder ways towards each other. Social injustice. Dickens uses the story to question the unequal distribution of wealth in society. The rich enjoy comfort and feasting at Christmas and ignore the dreadful living conditions of the poor. In fact, they effectively punish the poor for their poverty by sending them to workhouses. Scrooge is used in the novella to represent the Victorian rich, while the Cratchits represent the working poor. When the thieving workers divvy up the possessions of the dead Scrooge, their actions are justified as he was a miser, and if he had not been so, they wouldn't have needed to steal from him. Today's reader could see the novella as an allegory of modern society and wonder what's really changed in Victorian times. The supernatural. Victorians were interested in spiritualism and the supernatural as people believed in spirits who resided in the afterlife, wanted to communicate with the living. In A Christmas Carol, we see 4 spirits visit Scrooge, Jacob Marley and the 3 Christmas ghosts, and they help him realise the error of his ways. Okay, so let's move on to the structure of A Christmas Carol. The novella is split into 5 staves. A stave is a set of 5 parallel lines of which a musical note is written. By referring to the chapters as staves, Dickens suggests that novella will be a joyous, uplifting and a moral tale. Using the term stave also links with the title of the novella, as a carol is a traditional song we sing at Christmas. The title of the novella, as well as the use of staves, suggests to the reader that the story is meant to be listened to and enjoyed by groups of people. The narrator has a casual tone and comes across as talkative and witty storyteller, again suggesting the story should be read aloud to a group. Dickens gives each stave a clear purpose. The first stave introduces us to the character of Scrooge and highlights his many flaws. It also sets up the events that bring about his redemption. The middle 3 staves recount Scrooge's past, present and future and lead him to meet the 3 ghosts who teach him the error of his ways. And the 5th stave reminds us of the events of the first stave, such as the charity collectors giving the novella a circular structure, and shows us how the events of the story have changed Scrooge. I'm now going to talk about Dickens' use of language in the novella. The role of the narrator. The narrator controls the tone in the novella, using different language styles throughout the tale. At the beginning, the narrator is chatty and engaging to draw the reader in. As the story progresses, the narrator becomes more melancholy as the tale gets darker. At the end of the novel, the narrator is again light-hearted for the happy and uplifting ending. The use of personification. Dickens uses personification to help bring out the setting of the novella to life. Onions in the greengrocer's shops appear ruddy brown-faced, broad-girthed, as they sit, winking from their shelves. This playful example of personification makes the city seem exciting and alive and reflect the energy surrounding Christmas. The mood helps emphasise Dickens' message. For much of the novella, the mood is festive and jolly. However, Dickens darkens the mood when he wants to emphasise the social responsibility he is trying to put across. The use of figurative language. Dickens uses similes to create the comic mood. Even a sinister and frightening image of Marley in chains is softened by a humorous simile, wound about him like a tale. Symbolism and imagery. Dickens uses symbols throughout the novel to communicate his ideas. Marley's chain is made out of cash boxes, keys, padlocks and ledgers. This symbolises Marley's obsession with money and how it has led him to ignore his fellow man. The children Ignorance and want personify the problems caused when society neglect the poor. Fire and brightness are used to symbolise emotional warmth throughout the novella. The lack of warmth in Scrooge's life is depicted by a very small fire in his office and a very low fire in his home. Music is also used to show joy and happiness. In Fezziwig's party and at Fred's house, Fred's musical family is shown in contrast to lonely, miserable Scrooge. Weather reflects Scrooge's character and emotions, and he is described as carrying cold within him, and his presence iced his office. Scrooge's cold and bitter personality is shown as being more formidable than the weather, and the narrator makes this clear with, "No warmth could warm, nor winter weather chill him. No wind that blew was bitterer than he." Okay, now let's move on to the key quotes in the novella. Stave 1. As solitary as an oyster. External heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. "If they would rather die," said Scrooge, "they'd better do it and decrease the purpose population." Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. "Mankind was my business. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping by fate." Stave 2. "There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should have liked to given him something, that's all." Shaking hands with every person individually as he or she went out, wishing him or her a Merry Christmas. The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a fortune. Another idol has displaced me. I have seen your noble aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion gain engross you. Quite alone in the world, I do believe. Stave 3. There was nothing very cheerful in the climate of the town, and yet there was an air of cheerfulness abroad. Sprinkled incense on their dinners from his torch. A feathered phenomenon. There never was such a goose, Bob said. He didn't believe there were ever such a goose cooked. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die. I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast. This boy is ignorance. This girl is want. Beware them both, and all their degree. But most of all, beware this boy. Stave 4. I am prepared to bear you company, and do it with a thankful heart. It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for upon my life I don't know if anyone will go to it. I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends to be that way now. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you the good to see how green this place is. It really seemed as if he had known our Tiny Tim and felt with us, overrun by grass and weeds. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Stave 5. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I am as light as a feather. I am as happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy. I am as giddy as a drunken man. Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was his second father. He knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. The historical context of the novella, A Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol was written in 1843, at a time of great change in early Victorian Britain. The Industrial Revolution was taking place, and there was a sudden growth of the cities as the economy shifted from agriculture to industry and trade. People moved from the countryside to the cities, and many lived in squalor as the housing was appalling. Money from industry made the rich richer, and the gap between rich and poor widened. Workers had to toil for long hours for little money. Children didn't go to school and worked long hours for low wages to help support their families who barely had enough money to buy food. In the poorer areas of Britain, almost 1 in 5 children born in the 1830s and 1840s had died by the age of 5. The main causes of death were polluted drinking water, damp and tuberculosis, which claimed between 60,000 and 70,000 lives in each decade of Queen Victoria's reign. There was no healthcare at this time, and if you got ill you couldn't work, your whole family was at risk of death. For those who were unable to support themselves, there were the workhouse. These were not intended as pleasant places to stay. Men, women and families were separated, and those who were physically able to were expected to work for their keep. Those who could not pay their debts were sent to debtors' prisons such as Marshalsea, where Charles Dickens' father spent time. During this period, a small number of people became very wealthy, and they lived in luxury with large houses, plenty of money, food and clothes. Their children didn't work and were educated. Being seen to be civilised and adhering to a strict set of morals was important to high society in the Victorian age. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel and take a look at some of our other videos, including guides to revision techniques and essay writing. And thanks for watching.